Did you know that some of the best commander cards in Wilds of Eldaine weren't in the main set or the commander product? Let's take a look at them. Hey everyone, my name is DJ. This is the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel, and I was looking through all of the great commander cards in Wilds of Eldaine, and I found some, and I didn't know where they came from. They weren't in the main set, and they weren't in the commander product, and they were so good. I feel like I gotta share them here, because you might be missing out on some of the best cards for your deck. Let's take a look at a couple cards from the Jumpstart product. Starting off, I want to talk about Fairy Slumber Party. Fairy Slumber Party is 4 blue for a sorcery. Return all creatures to their owner's hands. For each opponent who controlled a creature returned this way, you create 2 1/1 blue fairy creature tokens with flying, and this creature can only block creatures with flying. I think when you're casting Fairy Slumber Party, you're going to be bouncing a creature from every opponent. So I think that this is probably going to get you 6 fairies, which is pretty good. 6 mana big tempo play and then deploy 6 fairies. But even if you only get a couple, this is going to be really good in specific decks. I've played Stolen by the Fae and felt okay with the tempo and the token creation, especially in my Flying Matters decks, the ones that can pump up all my flyers really big and make them relevant, or maybe my little creature tempo deck, like, for example, anything that has Reconnaissance Mission or Biden of Thassa, allowing me to go wide and draw a bunch of cards. Fairy Slumber Party just does a good job of sort of resetting everything, but also allowing you to have a pretty big board state. I mean, I could imagine, casting this, and then while everyone else is trying to reset, you got a bunch of flyers and you're just ready to pump them up and then smash in on the next turn. Next up, we have another card from Jumpstart. It's Ogre Skitterlord. Ogre Skitterlord is 4 red for a 6/5 Ogre Warrior with Menace. Whenever Ogre Skitterlord enters the battlefield or attacks, create 2 1/1 black rat creature tokens with this creature can't block. Then if you control 5 or more rats, each rat you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn. This is the red Grave Titan. It's not. And actually the comparison isn't great because Grave Titan's a completely different card. Ogre Skitterlord does have that 6 power, Menace is really great, and then creating rats when it enters the battlefield or attacks can be really good because rat bodies or any creature tokens can always be turned into advantage, whether you're just trying to get enter the battlefield triggers or sacrificing them for anything. This also has some great synergy if you're already going wide in rats. Giving all your rats +2/+0 could be a big boost when we're talking about a pretty, small creature. Of course, Ogre Skitterlord is in red. And so if this was in black, it would go in just every single rat deck out there to have sort of like a cool top end anthem out of nowhere. But being in red, it means that it's definitely limited to sort of the Rakdos rat strategy that's in Wilds of Eldaine. I do like the fact that this is under a quarter. So Ogre Skitterlord's going to see some play and it's going to be pretty good. So the next cards are in the commander product, but not in the commander decks. Let's talk about Throne of Eldrain. Throne of Eldrain is 5 mana for a legendary artifact. As Throne of Eldrain enters the battlefield, choose a color. Tap, add 4 mana of the chosen color. Spend this mana only to cast monocolored spells of that color. 3, tap, draw 2 cards. Spend only mana of the chosen color to activate this ability. So this is a big mana rock that you can only use in those monocolored decks. I like that. I've oftentimes put something like a Gilded Lotus in a deck. I know that we've kind of fallen off of those big mana rocks and leaned much heavier into 2 mana rocks, but I kind of like every so often this big rock that does a little bit extra. I also like the fact that this does let you draw a couple cards. I know that that's a lot of mana to draw cards. So whenever you're tapping it, you're giving it 4 mana and then you pay 3 to do it. So you're paying 7 mana for 2 cards on this thing. So that's not the best rate. I mean, honestly, the overpriced tapping for a couple cards also has me thinking of Chromatic Ori. Chromatic Ori is 7 mana legendary artifact. This lets you cast anything. So it's not like just pick one color and only cast that. Chromatic Ori just fixes all your colors. This taps for 5. But then this one has 5 in tap, draw a card for each color among permanents you control. So that could be 1, 2, 5, whatever. But Chromatic Ori definitely has this like over the top, tap a ton of mana to draw a couple cards. And that's also the same case for Throne of Eldraine. Look, if you were playing Chromatic Ori in your monocolor deck, or if you're playing Gilded Lotus, you might want to consider Throne of Eldraine. It's perfect for big battle cruiser magic when you're playing 5 mana rocks that you're basically taking that turn off and then you're ramping up to like 10 mana the next turn. That's a crazy boost in mana that's going to be super exciting. And then you just spend a ton of mana to draw a couple cards in the late game. This happens in those big, long, grindy games of Magic. And so if you're playing battle cruiser Magic, which is some of my favorite type of Magic to play, Throne of Eldrain is going to be perfect in those monocolored decks. Next thing I want to talk about is Court of Garenbreak. Court of Garenbreak is 1 green for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. Fantastic text. I would play it just if it made me the monarch, but of course it does a little bit more. At the beginning of your upkeep, distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among up to 2 target creatures. Then if you're the monarch, double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. 2 counters every turn is solid. You know, it's not game breaking in Commander, but if you have +1/+1 counter synergies, like you will play a card like Court of Garenbreak, especially because you become the monarch, you immediately draw a card and it replaces itself. Also, if you're playing +1/+1 counter synergies, hopefully you're playing creature strategies, which means that you'll be able to recapture the monarch or keep it really easily. And then there's that wonderful case scenario of just doubling up your counters. Doubling is such a fun word in Commander, and we know that we can put a ton of counters everywhere. Like there are cards that just dump counters across all of your creatures. Honestly, I think this is just great in +1/+1 counter decks. The only downside is that it's an enchantment and you might be running like Hardened Scales and Doubling Season and Primal Vigor, like all of these other enchantments that help your +1/+1 counter synergy. And really you need to make sure you have those critical mass of creatures and things that hold those +1/+1 counters. Let's talk about another court. We've got Court of Ardenvale. 2 white for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to your hand. If you're the monarch, return that permanent card to the battlefield instead. So you've got this like cool Sun Titan trigger every single turn. Your white deck will naturally kind of lean into this because there's a lot of cards that do this. I mentioned Sun Titan, but of course there's Savine's Reclamation and Luris and other sort of whitish strategies that play around with this CMC 3 or less. I really like that this is permanent card because that way we can use our fetch lands, our like prismatic vistas, to be able to get lands on the battlefield and then bring the land back onto the battlefield, allowing us to ramp in white. I really like that. But honestly, just getting a card back and then maybe cycling it away or sacrificing it and then getting it back again, that's the kind of engine that can really like keep your game going. Not to mention, like, just imagine this play pattern. You put this down, you immediately draw a card because you're the monarch and you draw that card. And then when someone attacks you, just throw your Spirited Companion and chump block it away so that when it's your turn again, you just get it right back again. So I can definitely see like small creature strategies really synergizing with the Court of Ardenvale. And the final card I want to talk about today is the best court and one of the best cards that you might not know about. It's Court of Lochthuan. Court of Lochthuan is 2 black for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. Fantastic text. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of target opponent's library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast it. If you're the monarch until end of turn, you may cast a spell from among the cards exiled with Court of Lochthuan without paying its mana cost. So just having access to an extra card every single turn when Court of Lochthuan is only 4 mana is great because we're fine playing these Phyrexian Arena style cards. I mean, just drawing an extra card every turn. But Court of Lochthuan allows us to steal from our opponents, which is very fun. It also gives us the monarchy. So we could theoretically be drawing an extra card ourselves and an extra card from our opponent's library. Not to mention, if we hold the monarch, the ability to cast things for free, that's just great. I love that it isn't like time restricted where you can cast it that turn, like this impulse play in red. No, just it's exiled and you can just cast it. Not to mention, you can just keep exiling cards. As soon as you regain the monarch, you can just look at all of the cards exiled with Court of Lochthuan over the past couple turns and cast any of them because it says you may cast a spell from among the cards exiled with Court of Lochthuan without paying its mana cost. That's just a free cast whenever you can recapture and hold the monarch. That's very good. When you're talking about card draw and cheating mana, those are 2 of the most powerful things that you can do in Magic, and this is slotted on just a budget black enchantment. All right, these are just a couple of the cards from Wilds of Eldraine that I thought were really cool, and I didn't realize that I couldn't open them up in my normal draft boosters. So keep an eye out for these cards because they're not in commander decks, they're not in your normal boosters, and they probably should go in some of your decks. Since you can't open these up in boosters, you should buy singles, and when you do, get them at Cool Stuff Inc. They're the sponsor of the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel. When you do use the coupon code JUMBO5, that's going to save you 5% off your order. Cool Stuff Inc. is fantastic and reliable, and they support us, so thank you, Cool Stuff Inc. And thank you so much for watching. I hope Wilds of Eldraine is upgrading all of your commander decks. Have a good one. Bye-bye.